The Medal of Honor citation was dated April 15, 1969, Mekong Delta, Vietnam. Staff Sergeant Robert Martinez had single-handedly assaulted an enemy position, saved 23 Marines, and turned the tide of battle. Emma read it 3 times before the truth sank in. This wasn't some random veteran with the same name. This was Bobby. The same Bobby who had been cleaning their school for 3 decades, who ate lunch alone, who everyone ignored. The most decorated hero in their building had been hiding in plain sight. Welcome to Hidden Heroes. Before we continue this emotional story, tell us in the comments from which city in the world are you watching this video today. And if you think stories like this need to be heard, hit that subscribe button to support the channel. We're growing every day, and I sincerely thank you for being a part of it. Lincoln High School stood like a brick fortress in Sacramento, California. For 30 years, one man had been part of its daily rhythm. The soft swish of a mop, the gentle clink of keys, the quiet hum of a man who went about his work without seeking attention. Robert "Bobby" Martinez had been Lincoln High's head custodian since 1994. At 75, Bobby moved a little slower now, his thick black hair silver-white beneath his Lincoln High baseball cap. Students passed him by the hundreds every day. To them, he was simply part of the scenery, as permanent and unremarkable as the trophy cases. "Morning, Mr. Bobby," a few polite students would say, and he would nod back with a gentle smile. His English carried the soft accent of someone who had learned it as a second language. Students saw only what they expected: an elderly janitor working a humble job. They made assumptions about his life, his background, his capabilities. He was invisible not because he tried to be, but because they had decided he wasn't worth seeing. If they had looked closer, they might have noticed how Bobby carried himself, his back straight despite his age, his movements economical and purposeful. They might have observed that he never complained, never raised his voice, never seemed rattled by chaos. He treated everyone with the same quiet respect, from the principal to the newest substitute teacher. Emma Rodriguez was different. A senior planning to study journalism at UC Berkeley, she had the curiosity of a natural reporter. When her AP history teacher assigned a project on local veterans, most students planned to interview grandfathers or family friends. But Emma wanted something different, an untold story. That's when she thought of Bobby Martinez. She had always liked the school's custodian. Unlike her classmates, she made a point of greeting him. Once, when she was struggling with college applications, Bobby had noticed her distress. "Everything okay, mija?" he had asked gently. They had talked briefly, and Bobby had offered simple wisdom. "Take it one day at a time. Tomorrow's problems don't need to be solved today." The interaction stayed with her. There was something about Bobby that suggested depths beneath the surface. Emma approached Bobby during lunch, finding him fixing a broken water fountain. "Mr. Bobby, were you ever in the military?" He looked up with a slight smile. "Vietnam, long time ago." "Would you let me interview you for a school project?" Bobby considered carefully before nodding. "Sure, mija, but nothing too fancy. I was just a regular soldier." Before the interview, Emma decided to research her subject, standard journalism practice. She started with basic Vietnam War searches, then almost as an afterthought, decided to search for Bobby himself. She typed "Robert Martinez Vietnam Veteran Sacramento" into Google. Most results were genealogy sites and social media profiles, nothing relevant. Then she tried "Roberto Martinez Vietnam," still nothing. Finally, on impulse, "Robert Martinez Medal of Honor Vietnam." The search results loaded, and Emma's world stopped. The first result was from the Congressional Medal of Honor Society's database. "Robert Martinez, Medal of Honor, Vietnam War, Mekong Delta, 1969. Emma stared, certain she had made a mistake. This had to be a different Robert Martinez. She clicked the link. The official citation filled her screen. "Staff Sergeant Robert Martinez, United States Army, 1st Cavalry Division. For conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity at the risk of his life above and beyond the call of duty on 15 April 1969 in the Republic of Vietnam." When his platoon became pinned down by intense enemy fire from a fortified position, Staff Sergeant Martinez exposed himself to heavy weapons fire to assess the situation. Realizing 23 members of his unit were trapped with no retreat, he single-handedly assaulted the enemy position. Moving across 200 meters of open terrain under withering fire, he destroyed 3 enemy machine gun nests. His fearless actions broke the enemy's defensive line and enabled the surrounded Marines to withdraw to safety. Emma read it 3 times. Born May 12, 1949. Current age, 75. The math added up. The timeline fit. Her hands shaking, she printed the citation. The next morning, she watched Bobby differently, studying his movements for clues she might have missed. By lunchtime, she had decided. She had to know. She found Bobby in the maintenance room, organizing supplies. Her heart pounded as she knocked. "Mr. Bobby, I was doing research and found this online." She held out the paper. "Is this you?" Bobby took the paper and read slowly. For a long moment, the room was quiet. Finally, he looked up, his dark eyes holding something she had never seen before. "That was one day in my life," he said softly. "A long time ago." Emma's knees went weak. The quiet custodian was a Medal of Honor recipient. The man students ignored had saved 23 lives in combat. "Mr. Bobby, you're a hero. You're one of the most decorated soldiers in American history." Bobby handed back the paper, shaking his head gently. "I'm a custodian. That other thing was just one day. This is my life now." "Why didn't you ever tell anyone?" Bobby chose his words carefully. "People see what they expect to see. They see an old Mexican janitor. They think they know everything about me. Maybe that's easier for everyone." "Don't you want recognition?" Bobby's smile was sad but gentle. "Recognition doesn't clean the hallways, mija. The medal was for one day. The work I do here, that's for every day." Emma left with her mind spinning. She had uncovered one of the most remarkable hidden stories imaginable. Over the following weeks, Emma researched intensively. She learned about the battle where Bobby earned his Medal of Honor, his company ambushed by North Vietnamese forces, 23 Marines trapped in a killing zone. Military analysts described his solo assault as tactically impossible and operationally insane. Yet he had succeeded. She found photos from his 1969 Pentagon ceremony. A young Robert Martinez at attention as the Secretary of Defense placed the medal around his neck. After discharge in 1971, he had vanished from public view. No interviews, no speeches, no veteran events. He had worked construction, married briefly, and found his way to Lincoln High in 1994. Emma wrote a comprehensive article but approached Bobby for permission before publishing. They met in an empty classroom. Emma handed him the 15-page article. Bobby read slowly, occasionally glancing at her. "You're a good writer, mija," he said finally. "You got the facts right." "But," Bobby stared out the window. "You know what happened after I got the medal? People wanted to make me into something I wasn't. Hero, symbol, inspiration. They wanted speeches, appearances, interviews." Emma listened without interrupting. "But I wasn't that person. I was just a scared kid who did what needed to be done. All that attention didn't feel real. So I found work where I could help people without anyone expecting me to be more than I was." "What if people knew who you really were?" Bobby was quiet, then smiled. "You know what changed my mind about your article? The way you wrote about all the school staff. You didn't just write about the Medal of Honor. You wrote about service in many forms." He looked directly at Emma. "You have my permission, but I have one condition. When people pay attention to me, I want them to also notice Mrs. Chen in the science labs, Mr. Washington on the grounds, and everyone who keeps this place running. Recognition shouldn't just be for the person with the medal." 3 months later, Emma's article was published in the school newspaper, Sacramento Bee, and nationally online. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Within hours, the story was shared thousands of times. News crews arrived. Veterans organizations reached out. The Pentagon contacted Bobby about ceremonies. But the most meaningful response came from Lincoln High students. On Monday after publication, Emma found dozens of students waiting by Bobby's maintenance room, not to gawk, but to properly introduce themselves to someone they had ignored for years. "Good morning, Mr. Bobby," became the most heard phrase in Lincoln's hallways. Students began greeting him by name, asking about his day, treating him with deserved respect. The change wasn't limited to Bobby. Students began acknowledging all support staff, cafeteria workers, security guards, office assistants. Bobby's story had opened their eyes to the possibility that everyone around them might have hidden depths. Bobby handled the attention with characteristic dignity. He granted few interviews, declined most appearances, and continued his 6 a.m. to 4 p.m. routine. But Emma noticed one change. Bobby smiled more often. Genuine expressions of joy when students greeted him, when people finally saw him as more than invisible. At year's end, Lincoln held a special assembly recognizing all contributors to the school community. Bobby was invited to speak not as a Medal of Honor recipient, but as head custodian who had served 30 years. His speech was brief, delivered in his soft voice with characteristic humility. Service is not about recognition. It's about showing up every day and doing necessary work, whether in a classroom, office, maintenance room, or Vietnam battlefield. The work matters. The service matters. Everyone who chooses to serve deserves respect and gratitude. The standing ovation lasted 5 minutes. Bobby continued working 2 more years before retiring at 77. In his final speech, he returned to his defining theme. The measure of a person is not recognition received, but service provided. Look for opportunities to serve others. Treat everyone with dignity. Remember that heroes come in all forms, sometimes uniforms, sometimes coveralls and mop buckets. The uniform doesn't make the hero. The service does. Emma, now studying journalism at Berkeley, gave the introduction at Bobby's retirement ceremony. Mr. Bobby taught me that important stories hide in plain sight, that the person we ignore today might be tomorrow's needed hero. That true service doesn't seek recognition, it seeks to make the world better, one small act at a time. After retirement, Bobby remained active helping younger veterans navigate civilian challenges. Emma kept in touch, eventually becoming an investigative journalist specializing in overlooked communities and hidden heroes, crediting Bobby with teaching her career's most important lesson. On Bobby's 80th birthday, Lincoln organized a celebration for all support staff. Emma wrote, "Robert Martinez spent 1 day being a Medal of Honor recipient and 30 years being a custodian. But he was a hero every day, not because of Vietnam, but because of how he lived afterward. He showed that heroism isn't seeking glory, it's finding purpose in service, dignity in work, meaning in making life better for others." Bobby's story became a journalism school case study about looking beyond appearances, revealing private information ethically, and storytelling's power to change worldviews. More importantly, it reminded people that heroes walk among us daily, choosing service over recognition, meaning over fame, dignity over glory. Sometimes extraordinary stories hide behind ordinary faces. Sometimes the greatest heroes never ask to be seen as heroes at all. This story was brought to you by Hidden Heroes. Have you ever overlooked someone with an extraordinary story? Tell us in the comments about assumptions that proved completely wrong. And if stories like this need hearing, hit subscribe. We'll see you in the next one.